Can you talk a little louder?
Oh, sorry. I was asking if she was the one who saw the connection between the scoreboard and the number line, because like I actually feel like I see more of a connection now than I did before.
Oh. Can you say how?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it doesn't necessarily translate into each one of what like her work, but like if you have like you start at 11, like if you know that you have plus 11, you start at 11, like what would be 11 on the number line, and then you go back like 15 spaces, and you end up at 4, which in theory that could work with the first one that she does, but then it doesn't directly translate to either of the next two. Because it's addition and because it's not.
Yeah. I was gonna say that it seemed like the number line might be being used to check your answer. So like because the answer is always on the number line. And it looks like when you count like how many times she's moving over, he or she, right? Mm-hmm. She's moving over, it's always the number that was presented as part of the problem. So like -4 was the answer, and there's 15 humps for the first one, and then for the second one, there's 3, and then for the third one, there's 4.
So like it seems like the way they have it written out from the word that they got correlates to the number line, but this middle thing,
The scoreboard.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting
Yeah.
to me because of the way you can take this scoreboard, this idea of the scoreboard, and then use the number line to complete it. To like visualize it.
But how do you see, like for Thursday, how do you see the scoreboard translating to the number line?
So you have 4.
Mhm.
I see +4, so I start at number line and I start at 4.
Wait, but they started at...
No, I know. I'm saying like you could.
Oh.
Not here, but like
okay.
it translates it because then you start at 4 and then you know you need to go back 1 and you end up at 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how
I
we
think
do
I
it
actually
too.
see it. I interestingly see it as an easier connection to make to the number line from the scoreboard than from the equation.
Yeah, I agree. But I see how it would be useful to check with.
So we're gonna take a step back and pull some implications for our own teaching and learning, like what you will take away from this whole conversation, what we just had, and everything we were talking about before. And Samantha, you can participate as well, what the implications are for our work.
Just like on the macro level.
Just whatever you feel like you're gonna be taking away from this conversation. What do you think?
I think I would be like more nitpicky about how students phrase their answers to word problems. I think normally when I look at it, I'm kind of just like, because I think on first glance I was kind of like, I'm not really sure what she's getting at, but she has the right answer. It says temperature in degrees. I see 5, I see 2, I see 10. These are numbers I use. Who probably knows what's going on? Next question. And like pushing on that a little bit more, just to improve like the way that they talk about math.
Yeah, so along the same lines, when we were trying to interpret and like decide what we thought the students understood, I didn't feel like I could give a complete answer or like a clear one because I didn't feel as though I could fairly evaluate 2 and 3 because of the maybe somewhat lack of effectiveness or sophistication in the ability to use words to explain their reasoning. Like if I had this sentence along with the scratch paper, I would have been able to connect the dots, but there maybe wasn't enough, or there wasn't enough of a clear articulation of the thought process, which I don't think could be expected of someone this age probably, but I would have I wanted more. So I understand that this was like an MCAS question, and this is after Sam gave us the context of this being the final draft. Like now I know there's more, and so she really did understand, I think, what was going on, but I wish I had had that.
So you want
So
to encourage,
I
what would
want,
you do?
like I think it's hard because this is like more of an MCAS thing, like I don't know, like, do kids, can they leave their work on here, like if they have like scratching and doodling, or?
Yeah, so the question says like you can show or explain. And so some students
Some students like will
Just
just
do
write
that,
calculations.
yeah.
Okay.
Some students will just do calculations, but I always encourage them to, and for the student, maybe too much,
Yeah,
to
like
make sure it's a clean answer ultimately. And so some of them would erase their work, and I would encourage them not to do that, but some of them have that desire for it to look perfect.
Yeah, and so I think that that's actually one of the things I would maybe ask of my students would be to maybe have it very clear, like box their answer, their final answer or something like that, but to keep all the work that they had in the steps leading up to it, because I know one of the things that I was very clear about, like with my students when I was student teaching, was that I can't help you if I don't know how you got there.
So this is not enough
To me, this
say
isn't
how they
enough
got
to
there.
say how she got there, not for me, no.
So encouraging some clear communication in their answers.
Like I would have maybe wanted like this 3 drafts ago, or how like
And validating that work with symbols is
is present and this isn't like, yeah. Sorry, I just
no, you're fine.
I think one thing I'm taking away from this is that like I don't spend enough time looking at student work and like how unrealistic it would be to spend this much time looking at everyone's paper, but at the same time how useful it might be.
Just to speak to that a little bit, I know it's unrealistic to spend this much time on every
Yeah.
piece of work, but maybe if you had done this on one work and then looked at them as a whole, you would have a more holistic picture of what you're
Yeah.
looking at.
And I think it's also interesting because like if you do have like 30 of these to look at or however many, if you look this in depth and on one of them and know what you're looking for and like it better informs you going forward. So even if you do spend like a little extra time on one, like I, at least from my practice, like could better come to conclusions and understand subsequent works.
So a few more implications about what we discussed when looking at the work and how that will impact your future teaching.
Like giving multiple methods, because I'm still stuck on this number 1.
Yeah.
And figuring out like, are they putting that just because it was useful for them, or because they think that's what they're supposed to have on their paper? Like, would they didn't know if they had just done the scoreboard, if that would have been enough work to justify their answer, or did they have to show like all the different things that they learned?
And I think that it's really interesting that there's like seemingly what we, I guess, are coming to the conclusion, like it was 3 separate things for the first problem, and then one method and no mathematical notation for the last 2. I think that's just a really interesting, like I want to like be inside the student's head.
That's a good thing, I think. That's a good desire. So maybe we can ask more questions, like if we were the teacher thinking as Lauren, maybe I would go back and talk to the student about why did you choose to put this in words? Why did you choose to put this in
Yeah.
symbols? And see if they're maybe valuing one response.
It also might have been
Type or-
an interesting thing to look at the evolution of like the drafts, just to see like where it started. All 3 of these questions, but especially like number 3, I think, 2 and 3.
So we're kind of seeing value in the process. I think
Okay.
that came up a couple of times. You were wondering, did they start with the number line? Did they start here? Did they work left to right? What order did things come in? Did they put 0 first?
It's really interesting when you brought up like, but was it left to right? Like that wasn't something that like I had even
Yeah.
considered. Like that maybe they had started on the right and then like we're working back towards the table.
This is kind of backtracking a little bit, but I noticed that like instead of back to number 3, instead of them, since they already had the number, instead of saying that when you add 1 plus the temperatures and divide that by 5, you get 2. They didn't say that. Since they already started with the answer, they
Mhm.
could have said that.
They could have said like, my answer works because this,
Yeah,
rather
but
than
it's-
showing,
Yeah,
but instead they showed kind of
how they were
got
thinking
that.
instead of how their answer was right.
And you're not making a judgment about
Yeah.
that, it's just an observation.
Yeah.
So it brings up the question, I mean, also backtracking, could it, this answer be a trial and error? Because you're working
Yeah. Interesting question.
are we working forward or back? Forward, we're working
Yeah,
forward, so
yeah.
just wondering, if this could have been a trial and error.
Right.
Mm.
Can I ask a question just about like the MCAS responses and like how they'd be graded? Because I just like don't know. Like, would this be like a full response?
So what I look for, so in each question we call them elements, so like the students go through and they had to copy complete the table.
Mm-hmm.
They had to show or explain they got to, I was literally looking for
Like-
-4 degrees Fahrenheit,
Okay.
-1, and then here I was looking for difference, I had to see like the answer,
Yeah.
I had to see the degrees Fahrenheit symbol, and I had to see either a show or explain.
Okay.
And then for the last one, I had to see the number, degrees Fahrenheit, and then a show or explain.
So the show or explain really gives the students the freedom to either do it more verbally or more notation, like word. Okay. And how are like, is it like a check? Like how are they like on the actual MCAS?
So what I do is, and I try and copy mimic it exactly.
Yeah.
These are called elements. So I put like a 1 and then another 1 for the number. I put a 1 for their explanation and a 1 for the difference and a 1 for their degrees Fahrenheit or something.
Okay.
And then the number of elements they have gives them like a 4 out of 4
Hmm.
or a 3 out of 4 and goes down.
Got it. Okay.
And so they're used to seeing that's how it's graded.
Interesting.
We'll do 1 or 2 more implications for our work.
Well, I guess in light of that, I think it's at least clear to me that like the importance of having the clear expectations and like the students knowing like that they need to fill out the table, that they need to have those degree Fahrenheits like where appropriate. And I'm still hung up kind of on the 12 written out. I don't know, I still don't know what to make of that, but like the student clearly knew that like she needed to have like difference degree, like
I'll say something I'm walking away with. Like I'm very hung up on. I always like to say, I don't teach for the test, but I prepare them. And so with this fine line of, this was one way I could prepare them, but it's like she clearly knew what was needed in the answer, which is like, am I happy about she knows how to like take the test, or did it hinder her ability just to do the math? And so there's this fine line that we have to balance.